Welcome to Paradigms at paradigms.life, the radio show and podcast that brings you inspiring people with visions of a viable future for life on Earth that includes humans. Hi, I'm Baruch, host of Paradigms. Thank you for listening. We're welcoming back a guest who's created a worldwide music distribution system for music from all around the world. You've certainly heard some of the music his company has brought forth for us, music we otherwise wouldn't have heard. He's on a mission of cultural sharing and exchange, and has been for decades. And now his company is celebrating its 30th anniversary. So we're going to hear all about it and listen to some great music from around the world right now on Paradigms. Dan Storper, welcome back to Paradigms.
Oh, it's great to be with you again.
Oh, I'm excited to talk with you about Putumayo's 30th anniversary.
Well, yeah, it's hard to believe. Time marches on, and I realize how long we've actually been putting musical compilations together at Putumayo World Music. So, yeah, pleased to celebrate it.
Last time you were on the show, we were talking about a collection of music you just had curated with Linda Ronstadt, and now we're talking about the whole progress of Putumayo World Music from inception to the present. And, you told us some of the story before about how it got started, but give us a little refresher on the background of this venture.
Sure. Absolutely. Well, I was a Latin American studies major in college. And then when I graduated, I traveled to South America to visit the countries I studied and fell in love with the handicrafts, first in Colombia. And then as I traveled further south, and decided to start a little handicraft import business, basically. Opened up a little shop in 1975 after about a year of doing exhibits at art galleries and department stores in New York City. I opened up this little shop, which I called Putumayo, named after a river and valley where I'd spend time collecting handicrafts in Southern Colombia. Loved the name, loved the place. It was a magical place. And then kept doing importing, traveling from to South America, collecting crafts, and then started traveling to India, Afghanistan, Nepal, Indonesia. And the company evolved much more into more of the clothing than handicrafts, because that's really what sold and kept us going. And I got into the rat race of designing 5 clothing collections a year. And it took me away from my original interest, which was, instead of spending time in clothing facilities, traveling around the country, collecting crafts and introducing people to other cultures through the interesting crafts that they created. So I got burnt out on clothing and decided I was going to try and look for something else to do when I was coming back from Indonesia and found myself in Golden Gate Park in San Francisco, heard this incredible African band called Katoja performing. It was one of those absolutely beautiful days. People were in this little alcove in the park, basically just having the time of their lives, dancing, people of all ages and ethnicities. And I was struck how the music brought them together, made them happy. The sounds were great. And I, noted the name of the band. They didn't have any albums to sell. So I figured I'd get them somewhere in New York when I came back, and went back to New York. I don't know if I would have forgotten about it, but a couple of days later, went into one of my stores and they were playing thrash metal music. And I got annoyed and said, I really have to create a musical ambiance that fits with the international crafts that we were selling, clothing and crafts. And so I started going around looking for music that I could somehow compile and play in the stores, albums that I could play. This was in the cassette days. CDs were just starting to come in. This was 91. And eventually put together a tape that we sent around to all the stores. And it was a compilation that I created of everything that I really liked in the international world, but it also included people I like Dylan and Van Morrison and Bonnie Raitt and others. So it was a mixture and mixtape, but everyone flipped out over the music, including songs that they had not ever heard by people like Van Morrison or Bonnie Raitt or others, because obviously they produce a lot of material that doesn't make it onto the radio. And so it struck me as being a magical moment where people were expressing interest. And it so happens that I was a member of the Social Venture Network, a nonprofit group that tries to integrate social responsibility into their business, people like Ben and Jerry and The Body Shop. And I got to know Richard Foos, the co-founder of Rhino Records. And it was through that association that enabled us to release the first couple of Putumayo albums. We were already selling our clothing and handicrafts to about 600 boutiques, gift shops, et cetera, around the country. And so we started offering. Michael Krause, who joined me, is a good old friend, and he was looking for something else to do. And he became our sales director. And he started basically doing the trade shows, selling to gift stores and boutiques. And before you knew it, we had a couple of hundred of these boutiques selling the music. And it really started taking off from there. Didn't sell as well in the record store. So Rhino kind of started to lose interest. And we said, well, we got to keep this going. And it, basically developed from there.
I'm talking with Dan Storper, founder of Putumayo World Music. He's telling us all about the founding of the company and what they're up to now. We'll be back with more of this conversation, talking about why world music is important. But first, we're going to hear a piece of music that Dan was just telling us about that really inspired him. From the best of Baba Ken and Kotoja, this is Sowale. You're listening to Paradigms at paradigms.life.
Aha! Nasua siamo!
Ken and Katoja with Sawale. And that is the music that started it all for Dan Storper and Putumayo. Now let's get back to my conversation with Dan and learn some more. I'm curious, in running a business, I mean, people run businesses, you want to make money, make a living, you want to get your thing out there. Some people choose to focus on, or at least include, social responsibility as part of the mission of their business, meaning that they see their business as part of community and want to be part of supporting and benefiting from community. I'm curious, in doing that, what have you learned? I mean, it's such a vague question. What have you learned, not so much about business, but about humanity, trying to always looking for ways to help us better ourselves?
Yeah, well, I think that's been a journey that I've been on from the very start of Putumayo. There was always a sense that I had, and maybe it developed even more, that many of the most kind of exquisite, some of the greatest music, some of the greatest crafts came from cultures that were struggling. And so it became my mission in a way to kind of present aspects of their culture, initially through handicrafts, the clothing, and then through music that essentially put a spotlight on the more positive side. So we could look at places like Haiti, which have struggled politically and economically over the years, and essentially try to view them in a different light, not this negative light of poverty and disease and war. And so that became part of the story of what we were trying to do at Putumayo. And then we decided that we would start donating a portion of the proceeds. And that came as a result of discussions with people like Anita Roddick from The Body Shop and Ben and Jerry and others who I'd become friendly with. And so we began to do that and contribute a portion of the proceeds from those albums for many, many years. And then we also, I think, in a way, by licensing songs and from artists that were lesser known, we were giving them a spotlight. We were getting oftentimes a chance for them to get an agent, to get a recording contract, to tour for the first time. They earned some money from the compilations. So the idea was somehow there was a multifaceted way in which the creation of a compilation that people of music that people didn't really know was an entree to the culture, to the artist, to the music, and hopefully would benefit the society and the local musicians and their communities in a variety of ways.
So what's so interesting about what you just said is that you are doing this global project that is focused on local communities. It's not about creating a monolith. It's about supporting people where they are at the scale they are.
Well, I think when it works, this is certainly we've had our experience where we've donated to nonprofits that were more effective or less effective. I mean, there were some, I can't even remember. I remember once we got scammed by some, fake charity or something like that. But the idea was we were trying to identify nonprofits that were doing good work in the countries where the music came from. That was part of it. And then in some cases, we were trying to help artists directly. So in the case, I moved to New Orleans and I was in transition when Katrina hit. And so we started doing a lot with the New Orleans musicians, donating to them directly, sometimes where we could, to help with reconstructing their houses and finding a way to return to New Orleans. And other ways, we did a concert or series of concerts to promote New Orleans music. We brought a lot of musicians back. It was one of the earliest concerts after Katrina. In other countries, like in Colombia, we donate every year. There's a community called Sibundoy, where I first went in southern Colombia. It's on the banks of the Putumayo River, a little village. It became a very troubled spot, and I haven't been able to go back. Probably could go now, but it had wonderful handicrafts. And anyway, someone contacted me from Sibundoy, who's a teacher locally, an English teacher, and every year now we try to give a few $100s for gifts, either at Christmas time, which is usually the time, or if they have some kind of disaster. So we're not talking about huge amounts, but we're, over time it's added up. And, I was invited and I've spoken around, I won't say around the world, but especially in Latin America, about the importance of putting a focus on music and art. And I collect folk art and love handicrafts still, although I'm not, kind of running an art company, although that's one of the things I'm hoping to do in the fall is start selling art from around the world. And I tried to do it in the 80s when I briefly had a home in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and it just didn't work out. It was too logistically challenging to operate a business at that time without internet, without cell phones and stuff like that. So, but the idea is, there's a kind of an audience that we've managed to cultivate over the years. And I think they appreciate the musical, it's a vast ocean of music out there. And so what we try to do is curate as best as possible and put thematic collections together.
We'll be back with more conversation and learn more about Dan's thoughts about world music and the world in general. Here is something from an album called Putumayo Presents Bossa Nova, Blue Bossa, from Ana Karem.
Eu sei, você sabe que o amor tem o seu momento de briga e dor, mas o que importa é ver você sorrir, depois fazer as pazes, namorar. Eu tenho um grande amor por ti. Venha, vamos andar à beira-mar e ver. A lua se mostrou, eu sou só tua. Mas o que importa é ver você sorrir, depois fazer as pazes, namorar. beira-mar e ver a lua se mostrou e eu sou só tua. Eu sei, você sabe que o amor tem o seu momento de briga e dor, mas o que importa é ver você sorrir, depois fazer as pazes, namorar. Eu tenho um grande amor por ti, meu bem. A lua se mostrou, eu sou só tua. A lua se mostrou quando a noite vem.
Some nice smooth Brazilian bossa nova. Blue Bossa, that's Ana Karem from the Putumayo Presents Bossa Nova collection. And now let's get back to my conversation with the founder of Putumayo World Music, celebrating its 30th anniversary, Dan Storper. In our current political climate, not just in the U.S., but in the world, so much is happening. You know, the damage we've done to the biosphere, in my mind, is what is actually informing the fear that is so prevalent, that is leading people to target people who they see as different from them. Because when people are afraid, they get angry. And when they get angry, they want to blame somebody. And so, especially with the aid of politicians who see their power rising moment in steering people to blame minorities for their troubles. So we see all of this going on. It's happening in the US, it's happening in Russia, it's happening in China, it's happening in Myanmar, it's happening all around just all over the place. So you're talking about coming from a place of, celebrating our common humanity and also getting those with resources to share them with those who have less. This is pretty basic and simple and altruistic, and we love this, right? I mean, this is something anyone can get behind. Have you ever run into people who oppose what you're doing or who have given you a hard time or who have been critical of your mission?
Well, I will say that one of the things that I've begun to understand better through my journey of discovery, and this I may have alluded to when I spoke to you the last time, I've come to understand that there are many worlds and many kind of special interests, and there is a variety of tradition and history, and some of it is quite beautiful and some of it is quite ugly. And I was a Latin American studies major in college, and I was taught about the problems of Spanish colonialism. I wasn't taught about some of the issues relating to U.S. presence in Latin America. And the desire to try and maintain and control economies and political leaders, et cetera. So I think the idea was I was naive, like much of America is naive. And I think there's been at different times in American history an awakening to some of the realities that has gone on. And so there's a blowback, and oftentimes you view that blowback and all the problems through your own political prism. You may not understand. And I have friends on the left and right. I'm actually working on a book now about the quest for peace and justice and political struggles of the 60s because of something that a friend told me over dinner when I first moved to New Orleans. And it just fascinated me and scared me. And I realized there's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes. And how did we get here? And so I think, I've been on this journey for the last 7 years or so, working on a book that tries to get to the bottom and understand what is the backstory, particularly as viewed through the prism of the events of the 60s, because that was a seminal period, a transitional period, and it was also a period of cultural divide. And in some respects, maybe more so than today, certainly in many ways, more so. It was not just about civil rights. It was not just about Vietnam. It was about an array of issues that were threatening established order. And so I think understanding that has become, and then ultimately trying to explain it is really a big part of what I'm trying to do. So, at the same time as I wish everyone was more open and accepting, I recognize that part of what makes people open and accepting is their personal experience and the prism that they've grown up under. One person I interviewed who passed away about a year or two ago was a former mayor of New Orleans named Moon Landrieu, and he was secretary of HUD, Housing and Urban Development, under Jimmy Carter. And we were talking about racism, and he was talking about trying to desegregate or actually remove the Confederate flag from City Hall when he was in City Hall in the 60s. And he said, we had to do that in the middle of the night when nobody was watching. And every day I was getting calls hate calls just because I was pro civil rights back in the day. And he said, I'm going to tell you something. I was a kid when my great grandmother was still alive. She died when I was about 10 years old. She was 16 when Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. So, hatred goes on a little bit like that. He described it like the film South Pacific. You're taught to hate from generation to generation. And I think, unfortunately, the unlearning of some of these traditional things to get to know people, I think that's one of the most important things, is to get to know people. We have people who apparently really like Putumayo from all different political persuasions. The idea is that at least they can meet on a musical playing field.
I'm talking with Dan Storper, founder of Putumayo World Music, and they're celebrating their 30th anniversary. Congratulations. Here is Chris Beer, some reggae. It's called Give Me a Break, from Reggae World 3 by Putumayo. That's Chris Beer with Give Me a Break. And now we're going to get back to my conversation with Dan Storper, founder of Putumayo World Music, telling us a bit more about their 30th anniversary and what's happening with his book. Here we go. This is Paradigms at paradigms.life. It's really so potent, the intensity of emotion that drives people to be polarized with each other ideologically. And then once people have got themselves in a position, the heels get dug in, the ears get shut down, and we're locked into this polarity, which anyone can see no matter what place you are on the political spectrum. Anyone can see that this polarization is bad for the country. It's bad for humanity. It's not good for the world. You know, it keeps us from supporting each other and being supportive, So I love Putumayo's mission of bringing all of this. And I love what you're saying, that you have friends and that there are people on all different parts of the political spectrum who partake of and enjoy and are nourished by this music. So how do we get people to put down the torches and pitchforks?
Well, I am a co-chair of a group called the Truth and Reconciliation Committee. And that was a committee that was formed by a number of pretty well-known folks, not David Talbot, who is a writer who's written a couple of incredible books, one called Brothers about the Kennedy brothers, and one called The Devil's Chessboard about Allen Dulles and the CIA. He was one of the basic founders of this group. There are people like Daniel Ellsberg and people like Rob Reiner and Oliver Stone and others who were very active in trying to present an alternative view of what was going on and are very strongly affected by the assassinations of the 60s and what went down politically in that period. And I think it's important to understand, because I live in New Orleans, that, certainly at that time, it was kind of this trying to understand how to move out of this extraordinarily dangerous nuclear hanging over Cold War, where basically, if you were a hardliner and you were a member of the John Birch Society or White Citizens Council or any of these other right-wing groups at the time, you could not imagine that people like John Kennedy were coming along and promoting integration and ideally a cooling down and end of reducing nuclear weapons and stuff like that. So you actually had an incredibly polarized environment, although publicly, there was this attempt to try and ameliorate, mediate, etc. But over the last 20 years, there's been a lot of stuff hidden. I think that unfortunately, because, and this is part of the process of kind of waking up, is that there have been a lot of lies and cover-ups on the part of government, media, et cetera, over the decades. And so a lot of people, if you're on the right, you're going to see it as an assault against your position, against democracy, against the Constitution. If you're on either the center or left, you just look at it and go, why are they doing this? You may not change your behavior. You may choose to vote for somebody who you think might be more telling the truth. But I think part of it is that the idea of truth and reconciliation is coming to an understanding of what went on, in a sense, why it happened, and then how do we now move forward? Because I think there is a world of people who are unhappy with government and the media. Obviously, the internet has helped present alternative views. There used to be alternative news weeklies that were more powerful, and that became a form of alternative reality to what was being presented. I've tried to take, I don't know if you'd call it a centrist position, but I'm trying to bring people together, and that comes through. But I also know how alienated so many are, and you've got your pet issues. So it's got to be one of the great challenges of all time, is to bring these disparate people together under the banner. I think it's important to have somehow political leaders that can kind of understand that. I think, unfortunately, most of the current political leadership is stuck to traditional, stories that are not really true or relevant today. So I don't know. It's a long-winded way. I'm trying to, every day when I'm working on my book, I'm trying to kind of understand it and express it in a way that people can understand and appreciate it, and see if it can help make changes.
We'll be back with more of my conversation with Dan Storper in just a few minutes after we hear this music from the Putumayo album Acoustic Latino. The artist is Trovador, and the song is Cheger.
Se oyen sus pasos al terminar la jornada. Llega a su casa solitario y su alma, las manos viejas de trabajo y asador. Cansado sueña con una triste canción. Tanta pena, tanto trabajo y sudor. La noche quieta, su guitarra en un rincón. Tanta pena, tanto trabajo y sudor. La noche quieta, su guitarra en un rincón. ¿Por qué te quedas callado? ¿Por qué te quedas callado? Si tu canto es pa' gritar, porque amas la libertad. ¿Por qué te quedas callado? ¿Por qué te quedas? Si tu canto es pa' gritar, porque amas la libertad. Se oye un murmullo de estrellas en su interior. Será el remoto recuerdo de una canción. Sus ilusiones ya no son querellas, pues su guitarra ya no alivia tanta pena. Trovador de la madrugada, ¿quién cantará la vida si tú no estás? Trovador de la madrugada, ¿quién cantará la vida si tú no estás? ¿Por qué te quedas callado? ¿Por qué te quedas callado? Si tu canto es pa' gritar, porque amas la libertad. ¿Por qué te quedas callado? ¿Por qué te quedas? Si tu canto es pa' gritar, porque amas la libertad.
From the Putumayo album Acoustic Latino, that's Trovador with the song Shajer, pardon my pronunciation, but wonderful, soothing music. And now let's get back to my conversation and hear from Dan Storper, founder of Putumayo World Music. We all have our moments where we have strong emotion when we read about an issue or something someone in the public eye has said that we find indecent or offensive or even, truly immoral. And it happens on both sides of the spectrum, of course. Everyone gets to hear that stuff. And so they just had all this flooding in Vermont, right? And Vermont is this little state, and and I'm from Vermont. There's a lot of different political stripes in Vermont, but people are rallying. People are working together. When Katrina happened, and I was a first responder after that, and working at a clinic, people came together. It was my honor. People came together. People from all different walks of life. Yes, there was the Algiers militia. Yes, there were some horrible crimes, white supremacist crimes committed. It's true. And there's been some accountability. But there was this overwhelming sense of people helping each other no matter what. It seems that we have to get to a point where things are really, really bad before we rise to that, us humans. It just seems to be part of the way we're built.
Well, it's funny. I keep thinking about whether or not there could be a way. I remember going to a political a political presentation. It was interesting. I don't know if you know the story about James Carville and Mary Madeline. So they are from completely different political views. They're married, but this was in the 2016 run-up to the election. And I don't think the candidates had all been nominated, but I remember sitting there thinking, as they were discussing the candidates from different political perspectives, how I could, probably find one or two things to say positive about each of the candidates, even though I was not going to support in any way, shape, or form Donald Trump. I could still find things that he said that made sense. And so my point is generally to try to get people not to reject somebody entirely 100% ever. And that's part of the challenge of being, or the opportunity of being objective, and to walk in and look at these things and say, okay, politically and practically, what's the underlying story here in each and every case? And it's hard to do, and everyone has a job or struggles to find work and pay the bills. We all have issues, but there is this underlying thing, that you can basically find common ground over in almost every issue. There may be some things politically and based on your religion or based on something that you could never accept. I mean, certainly abortion seems to be one of those dividing lines. But I think even within these issues, there is an opportunity to kind of find some kind of common ground. And what I appreciate, especially about some of the politicians in the 60s, especially the Kennedy brothers, was their effort to try and be pragmatic, but also move things forward in progressive ways. And it's really that dogmatic insistence on maintaining your position, whether you're a hardcore a Republican or you're a dyed in the wool socialist. There's got to be some way to find an element of common ground, and part of it is that there's got to be some new leadership that I think takes a position on the truth being crucial to this, that there's a hidden factor about what really went down and how we got to where we are that needs to be in some level understood. And we have to find a way to have truth and reconciliation and move forward.
We're going to hear a track now from Putumayo's Global Groove 3 album. It's Diogo Ramos, and the song is Kabacha.
Vai no cabaçal, pega uma bonita, puxa a cabaceira, que ela se esparrama. Quanta cabaçada tem nessa botija, põe água no miolo, mas vê se não derrama. Vai no cabaçal, pega uma bonita, puxa a cabaceira, que ela se esparrama. Quanta cabaçada tem nessa botija, põe água no miolo, mas vê se não derrama. Roda, roda, poranga na cabeça. Roda, roda, a cuia tá na mão. Roda, roda, até que amoleça. Agora esse goró vai ferver no cabação. Caba, 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 cabaça. Caba, 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 cabaça. Caba, 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 cabaça. Caba, 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 cabaça. Vai no cabaçal, pega uma bonita, puxa a cabaceira, que ela se esparrama. Quanta cabaçada tem nessa botija, põe água no miolo, mas vê se não derrama. Roda, roda, poranga na cabeça. Roda, roda, a cuia tá na mão. Roda, roda, até que amoleça. Agora esse gol
Diogo Ramos with Cabacha from Putumayo's Global Groove 3 album. And now here's the final part of my conversation with Dan Storper. Do you have a story about signing an artist that stands out in your mind as an experience you value?
Well, I think the most important thing in music, especially when you've listened to so much, is when you get goosebumps, when you experience something, especially if it's live, that is transformative. It's just so powerful. And I will say that one of the great moments in my career was listening to this Zimbabwean artist named Oliver Mtukudzi perform with his full band at a music conference in Sweden. I don't remember what year it was, probably in the late 90s. And I was walking to an appointment. I had an appointment to meet somebody. It was probably about another record label or distributor or something like that. And I was walking by this performance, and I just stopped and was stunned by the power and beauty of the music. And certainly, I've told the story about how the label got started with Katoja. It's the same basic thing. So almost every moment where I've had this kind of special moment that stops me in my track, we actually are releasing a playlist. The album we did called Islands, that was quite popular. It had music from wonderful places. And Cape Verde is one of the islands that the music is just incredible. And I remember going to Cape Verde, never signed an artist from Cape Verde, but I do remember just feeling like there is so much great music in the bones of this place, in every cafe. And most of the people, for reasons of lack of opportunity, had moved to places like Lisbon or Paris or even Massachusetts. But even the people that were still there, it seemed like everyone could sing. Putting that Islands album together, I remember sitting in my office, and I wrote about this in the introduction of the album. It was a mid-November day in New York City. I'd been busy working. The weather was bad. It was raw. It was not very nice. We're going into winter, which I'm not a fan of. And I was kind of bummed out, a little depressed. And I sat there and I started working on, I had to write, back then I was writing liner notes for the albums. And I put the Islands collection on so I could get started writing liner notes. And I started tapping my toes and started, my entire demeanor, my entire mood changed just listening to that Islands album. It's part of the 30th anniversary that we're now celebrating, is that we're going back and revisiting and presenting at least playlists with some of those original albums that, I've had that moment with people like Habib Kwate, who's an incredible Malian artist, Ricardo Lemvo, who's from Central West Africa, an Afro-Latin artist. One of the great moments I just get chills thinking about it was I was on an Afropop trip to West Africa. That's when we went to Cape Verde, but we stopped in Dakar in Senegal. And everyone, including me, were excited to see the legends like Youssou N'Dour, who's an incredible artist. But one night we ended up in this little club that was kind of had maybe 20 people at most in the audience. And there was this band who was performing Afro-Cuban music. They were African, but they had somehow, because records had traveled across the ocean and they had fallen in love with Latin music, had incorporated Latin music into their sound. And so, but it was like this extraordinary blend that they felt that was showing the connection between the old world and the new world. In that blend of African and Cuban music was the basis of something that I think is fundamental to the way music has traveled and the possibility of connections. There are some people that probably are not happy about the fact that Putumayo celebrates this hybrid of music. I think the idea is, though, that the hybrid, it's a little bit, I used to have this argument with but discussion with one of my employees. He said, Dan, I see why you like sushi instead of sashimi. You like to cut the fish with rice. And I said, that's an apt metaphor, that I just feel like it has a remarkable opportunity to kind of connect people of different backgrounds and cultures. So music is a good entree into that.
So this 30th anniversary is happening. How are you celebrating it? What are the things?
I'll tell you, we did it in Vermont, and we have a small office outside of Burlington, a little town called Charlotte. And so about 2 months ago, we had a lovely album release party, not album, a 30th anniversary celebration at a club there. And we invited fans and people that had worked at Putumayo over the years, and customers, people of all backgrounds. And Jacob Edgar, who deserves a lot of credit, he's been with Putumayo now, working for us for the first 10 or so years and then consulting with us ever since. He's the primary guy these days who's basically out there looking in this vast ocean of music for the songs that I can then select from, basically, to create compilations that, I'll spend my time sequencing and doing a lot of that stuff. He put together or invited, I think it was 5 different groups that are actually from different parts of the world. I think it was May 26th, and invited them. 3 were based in Montreal, 2 were based in the Burlington area. And so they all performed. But at the very end, they joined together for an impromptu, moment. And that was just amazing, because here you had 5 different groups all on stage, crammed in there with singers and backgrounds, and they got into this universal groove, and they found a way to bring together some of the best elements of all their different musical backgrounds and cultures. I've traveled around the country. I've obviously been talking to radio stations and media, celebrated, and visiting customers, and we're still working on things. The 30th anniversary playlist that we're going to publish this week, it's business as usual in a certain way, but it's also kind of taking a moment to figure out ways to kind of look back at some of the inspirations and early Putumayo material that we offered back as early as 1993.
Well, Dan, really a pleasure to talk with you again, and wonderful to be able to talk about these important things and to hear more about the way Putumayo is part of bringing people together in the world. I mean, that's what it's all about. So more power to you.
Thank you. And thanks for inviting me on your show. And thanks for doing what you're doing. I was reading about it before I got on and realized how your journey has been fascinating as well. So I wish you well.
Dan Storper, thank you so much for coming back to Paradigms to talk with me about Putumayo World music, about the anniversary you're celebrating, 30 years, really, wow. The book you're writing, and just what you've been learning through your life. I think the message is really clear. Let's all enjoy music from other cultures. Let's be enriched by that, and let's let the excitement of difference bring us together instead of dividing us. Music is universal, and the music we've been listening to from Putumayo World Music is just great artists that we would probably never have heard from had Putumayo not included them in their collections. People talk about cultural exchange. Well, this is it. Just by listening to this music, we're creating a more peaceful world. So thank you, Dan. Can't wait for the book to come out. If you enjoyed this conversation with Dan Storper, if you've been enjoying the music, check out Putumayo's website. It's putumayo.com, putumayo.com. Very simple. They have so many collections of music, albums, playlists, kids' music, all kinds of stuff. It's a great website with a lot to enjoy. I hope you'll check it out. And let's all just keep listening to music from around the world and be world citizens together. If you enjoyed this episode of Paradigms, I hope you'll check out our website, paradigms.life. Lots of cool stuff there, including our entire archive of almost 600 episodes. And you can find Paradigms wherever you find your podcasts. Pandora, iTunes, you name it. It's all about the music. It's all about the creativity. It's all about the inspiration. We're going to close out the episode with one more bit of music, as we always do, from Putumayo's World Party 5 album, Giacomo Laricchia, Fiore d'Inverno. And as we wrap up this episode, enjoying all this music from around the world, let's let the word for the week be rhythm. Let's just notice the rhythms around us, in the music, in our speech, in the sounds we hear. What's the beat? Your heartbeat? What's the rhythm of your life? Notice that. All right, Baruch signing off for this episode of Paradigms. We'll be back next time with more inspiring people. Until then, notice the rhythms in your life. And be well.
Fiore d'inverno, fiore che sboccia, tu sei una viola che non teme la pioggia, cresci nascosto, lontano dal sole, tu sei prezioso e resti nel cuore. Fiore d'inverno, fiore delicato, qualche paura ma ora tutto è passato. Fiore d'inverno, fiore discreto, un ciclamino che nasconde un segreto. Io ti ho osservato vicino a un prato, prima un seme poi un bocciolo è spuntato. Fiore d'inverno con i tuoi colori, rallegri il mondo quando piove fuori. Fiore d'inverno, fiore tenace, un bucaneve che ricorda la pace. Tu non gradisci troppa attenzione, senza timore con la neve o col sole. Fiore d'inverno, fiore coraggioso, che questa vita resti sempre un bel gioco. Questa vita resti sempre un bel gioco. Fiore d'inverno, fiore coraggioso, che questa vita resti sempre un bel gioco.
You've been listening to Paradigms at paradigms.life.